All right, welcome back here to the Gill Athletics Track and Field Connections podcast. I am so blessed that you're here. We bring coaches from around the world, but around the country here on a weekly basis, and really just humbled that they would join us and just share their story and their journey and what they do in this great profession. From time to time, got a special one today here. From time to time, we like to bring you, I don't know if it's fair to call them behind the scenes people, because I'm a behind the scene person. I'm not a coach. Definitely not an athlete. But we'll bring athletic directors, we'll bring some Gill teammates on here, and other times we'll bring partners of ours here. And really, you're going to get a kick out of this one because this is an unbelievable background, unbelievable service to our sport. So I'm really excited for you to hear today's story. So help me welcome the owner of VS Athletics, the wise, the wonderful, Mr. Rich Benoy. Rich, how are you, my friend?
I'm fine. Nice to see you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You've been on the list. I always tell people, like, I have this long list, and since I only do one a week, it's like I only get 52 a year. I wish I could get everybody on my list every year. So I'm really excited about this one. I know a little bit about your journey, and it really is. If people, it's kind of hard because I guess I'm speaking to people who are not listening to the podcast right now. If you're not going to listen to this podcast, you're missing out, because the background today's guest that Rich has today, it's really interesting, and it's really kind of nice of what he does and his crew and team there at VS Athletics does for our sport in general. And so I'm excited to dive into that. Well, Rich, this is hard because normally I'm interviewing a coach, right? And so it's really easy to ask that coach, hey, where does coaching begin for you? You actually, spoiler alert, has very little coaching experience, but your breadth and depth inside of our sport is unmatched, to be real frank with you. Let's start with you. Let's go back and talk about, because I love these stories. You have a really interesting, in-depth background in the sport of track and field as an athlete. Talk to us, get us started on where track and field starts for you.
Well, that's an interesting thing. My father, who has passed on, but my father, way back when I was in high school, I, like every teenage boy out there, wanted to play football. And so my dad explained to me that if you want to get faster and you want to get better, you need to run track. And track was the last thing on my mind because I wanted to play football and play golf. Golf was my big thing. And so I went out for the track team. And lo and behold, I had success, and I made the California State meet my senior year, 1986, which, if you don't know, California State meet is one of the most difficult meets in the world to make. They only take roughly, well, it used to be back when I was there, they only took 27 kids. We only have one state meet. We don't have divisions. We don't have different, like some places have 5A, 6A. So we have one. If you go to a school with 3 kids or you go to a school with 5,000 kids, you all compete in the same meet. There's no ifs, no ands, no buts about it. And so if you make that meet, it's kind of special. There's something that's a big deal about being part of the California State meet. So I went to that, and like the whole world of track and field kind of changed. I went from a small town in Northern California to Los Angeles to compete in the meet. I got to see all of these different kids from around our state, and it just kind of opened my mind. And so then from there, I was going to go play football at Santa Barbara City College. And again, I'm going from a small town to, I was living 2 blocks from the beach. I was living life, the good life. And so I left home, went there, and fell in love with track. And so I played football for about half the season, and I messed up my ankle, and I didn't want to mess up track. So I redshirted football and never looked back, and then went on from there and been immersed in track and field. I owe everything in my life to track and field, everything in my life.
Well, while there certainly have been football/track athletes that have had success in both, all the way to the Willie Gaults and Ronaldo Niemeyers on the highest NFL type level, Michael Carter. What was it about? Because they are very different sports in the sense of, very team oriented. You have to have 11 pulling on the same rope for the offense or the defense. Track, while it certainly is team oriented, there is a team trophy and those kind of things for conference and state. It's more individualistic. What was it about track that really pulled you over? And obviously today it's, you're all the way over. You're done with football.
Well, you hit it on the head. It was the individual side of it. I loved the side that you got out of it what you put into it. Because I was a guy who I love going to the track. I would get up at 8 in the morning. I would go to the track and still be there at 5 at night if you let me. I would train and train and train. I didn't want to depend on somebody else. I wanted my successes to be my successes and my failures to be my failures. And trust me, there were plenty of failures, but it wasn't because I wasn't putting the effort out. I would, if anything, I'd overtrain myself because I would go to the track every day I would do everything I could. I loved going to the track. And that's the one thing that, now that I'm, in my 50s, I miss, is that camaraderie of going to the track and being part of that group, and being, I can still smell the track. I can still smell, there's a smell to a brand new track. It's the most, to me, it's the greatest smell in the world. Some people say Christmas, and it's no, you go and smell a track, it is amazing.
Well, and this is kind of harder because I know you and how driven you are. Do you think your face kind of lit up a little differently when you talked about making the state meet, and you even said, you're like, oh, it was different at that, like it opened up this. It wasn't just track on my local track. This was a little bit like there's a bigger scene here. Do you think if you would have had success like that in the football team, or even golf, whether it's a state meet or a big invitational, that you, like, I could be talking to the owner of golfpro.com right now?
It could have been, but track is where I got my break. That's, you hit it right in the head, that every situation I got into where I had more success, where I went to junior college and then I got my scholarship to go to the University of Minnesota. And then from there, I went on to the professional circuit and made the Olympic trials. And I was lucky enough that our Olympic trials were in the Atlanta Olympic State. Well, the second one was in the Atlanta Olympic Stadium, and that was phenomenal. I mean, I didn't make the team. We're not going to go down that road, but it was still a great experience of being inside the stadium, being inside the call room, being inside that facility that was the Olympic Stadium.
Well, we are going to go down one road because you just mentioned something that I always found fascinating. So you are a California kid through and through. We have to make sure we do talk about the California state meet and as it relates to other state meets, because that is a fascinating, and I have opinions kind of both ways. Would love to get your opinion there. So we'll put a pin in that. But you're a California kid, California state meet, go to Santa Barbara Community College. I mean, I'm not sure it gets much more California than Santa Barbara Community College. It's just a great place. And then you go to the university, by the way. I love this school. I'm a big fan. But you go to I'm gonna call it the frozen tundra. You go to Minneapolis. You become a gopher. How does a California kid, who's good, by the way, so you had options, how do you get all the way out here to the Midwest in Minnesota?
Well, it's an interesting story. My mother and father are both from the Minneapolis area. My mom went to high school in St. Paul area, and my dad went to high school across the river in Hudson. So most people would ask, well, then how did you end up in California? Which is, my dad joined the Marine Corps and was based at Camp Pendleton, fell in love with California, married my mom, they moved to California, and I became a California kid. But because I'm a historian, that's what I went to school for, that's what my degree is in. I wanted to see where my mom and dad grew up. I wanted to go and see I'd heard about it all the time. I'd heard about the snowstorms and this and that and the other. I wanted to be part of it. And I really wanted to run indoor track because I'd never run it. Indoor track was absolutely non-existent. I mean, there was a few big Grand Prix meets, but it was non-existent out here. So I wanted to go and see. And then I went back to the University of Minnesota for my recruiting trip, and the coach by the name of Phil Lundeen blew my mind. He is probably one of the single greatest coaches I've ever been associated with. His thought process was 10 years in front of everybody else in the 80s when I went there. I mean, we were doing things that the East Germans and the Eastern Bloc did, because he went over there and trained with them, and now are just common. It's just common here, the plyometrics, the med ball stuff. But that was part of our everyday workouts when I went to the University of Minnesota. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to train. I know it sounds awful. I didn't want to go to school. I wanted to train. That's what I wanted to do. Schooling I had to do because it was part of that goofy trade-off you have to do, but I wanted to train, and he was phenomenal. I mean, he had all of it, and he knew what he was talking about. He knew how to integrate speed into endurance, and it was everything I looked at made my head just explode. Like, this is great, and I couldn't wait to get there and start training. And I stayed there. Like, when I was there, instead of coming home I came home one summer I stayed and just trained with him all summer long. I want to train. I want to get the information. Like I said, to this day, he is the one coach who just the weight training and all that made me who I was. And then when I left to go pro, when I came back to California, it was all my new coach who took over my pro career. We had the same mentality, and it just grew from there.
Yeah, I think Phil Lundeen might be one of the more underrated coaches.
Oh,
I think to your point, we have a lot of recency bias, and he was doing a lot of things early that now, like you said, it is kind of commonplace.
yep.
But he was, he was kind of cutting edge in that sense of
Oh, very much.
trying new stuff and trying and learning from what others were doing.
Yep. Yep.
He was and is the master, and a really good dude.
Yes. Oh, he's a phenomenal person.
Such a really good
Phenomenal
guy.
person.
What were you're a history guy. You went there to study history. What were you thinking as you were working on your undergrad for a career? What did you think? Like,
Well,
I'm gonna go do history because I'm gonna become a.
no, no, it's a weird track thing. So before track bug bit me, I wanted to work on Wall Street. That was my whole, I was bound and determined to be on Wall Street and be part of that whole world. And as you know me well, that fits my personality somewhat well. So Wall Street was, I in 1986, I was off to Wall Street once I got my degree and everything and was in place. And then the track bug bit me. And so you can't work 20-hour work days and run track and do all that stuff. And so I tried to figure out, how can I do this? And teaching became immediate. Like, well, you can work 5 days. You get out at 3 o'clock. You can go train with the kids on the track. You get your weekends so you can train. You get summers off to go to Europe and race. So I'm like, and I love history. So, hey, I'll just become a history teacher and I'll make that work. And then once I got done with, I'm not a school guy, as you probably heard from the earlier part of it. So once somebody told me, hey, you have a job offer, I was like, I'm not going to get my teacher. I'm just going to go start working and start running. And it happened to be with the track company. So it made life even easier.
So I was, this is so hard telling you this. When I was in high school, I also was a hurdler. Hard because we had two different hurdling careers. But when I started, I wanted to hurdle for two reasons. One is because our high school team sucked. And what I mean by that is our practices every day, Rich, I don't know if you remember this, every day, and this is no exaggeration, every day we would run our events and that was it. So we do our 2 little laps, warm up, touch our toes, and then we would literally run the schedule of the events. And so at that time, when I first started, because I was terrible, there's no ending, no good ending to this story. It's not like I got better, by the way. But I was a half miler. So so the first event for us in Alabama was the 4x8. So we'd run the 4x8, and then the guys would do the 100 meters or something. I can't remember the order, but, and then I'd run the 800, then the mile and the 2 mile and the 4x4 every day. I don't know how I didn't quit, to be real. Now that I think about that, why didn't I quit? This sucked. But I would see the sprinters, right? They would go do the 100, the 200, the 4x1, they're out. And the hurdlers, they do the hurdles and maybe they didn't even run the 4. That's what really sucked. They didn't even we ran the 4x4, the 800 meter guys. And so I kept watching. I was like, man, what am I doing all this stuff for? Like, I could just do 110 meters and be out. So I asked coach if I could try out, and hurdling is cool. Let's be,
yes,
talking to a hurdler, but come on, man. I don't care.
It's the coolest around.
If you're listening right now and you coach throws are amazing. I love throws. Sprints, come on, they're awesome. Distance, that's great. But the hurdlers, that's just a different bar. It's just cool. It's amazing. Even bad hurdling, people will watch because it's awesome.
Yeah,
and they watch
because you're waiting for the disaster.
Exactly. And they watched that a lot with me. And so I went and tried out for the hurdles, and it was a terrible tryout. But I started hurdling, and I thought, man, if I just practice, like, I'm going to be good. I'd seen some video, this is back in the 90s. I'd seen some video of what good hurdlers look like. I was like, I'm going to look like that. Unfortunately, I never did look like that. But you did, and you got to do, I almost said you got to do what I dreamed of, but I don't know that I actually dreamed. I didn't even know there was maybe a pro circuit. I definitely knew the Olympics, right? So you mentioned 96 Olympics, Atlanta. Come on, that's where most of our people in our age is like, that's the golden age, Olympics and everything. But you got to do something really unique, really special. You actually did run this whole pro circuit. Talk to us about, because it's, college track. I mean, that's the Mecca. That's my ultimate favorite is college track and field. But a lot of us dream about, well, what's after that 4 to 5 years. Most of us don't do anything. We don't have the talent and the gifts and maybe the lucky breaks to go there. You did. Talk to us about what's it like running on the pro circuit, specifically as a hurdler.
Well, I got lucky. Like I said, so when I graduated, or when I got out of school, I got a job working at the time, Springco Athletics. And I cut a deal with the owner of the company at the time that if I ran well and I hit the marks, he would pay for me to go to indoor nationals, outdoor nationals, and the meets, as long as I represented the company in a positive way and talked to everybody and kind of, did what you and I have done for many years on the weekends. And I said, you're basically going to pay me to go talk to people. I have no problem with that. I can do that any day of the week. And so I got set up. I started racing, and there was marks you have to meet, to make the national championships and all that stuff. And I found myself a coach out here in Southern California who would coach me, and we started working together. And I started to have some success in '92, and then I hurt my knee really badly, like really really bad, and I could barely move by the time the Olympic trials got around. I made the trials, but I just couldn't compete because my knee hurt so bad that the getting out of bed took 20 minutes just to get my knee so I could stand up and walk around. So I qualified, went to lovely New Orleans, and but did not compete. And then in '93, I was starting to come around. I had some success indoors, and then I crushed a tendon in my ankle jumping over a guy at the finish line. Yeah, and that ended my '93 season right then and there until I started to get back running in about June. And then in '94, and then I just started training. I just said, if this is going to work, it's got to work. And I just started training. And then in '94, I went back to Boston again, and they gave me a break, and they put me in Grand Prix Mesa. I got second or third, I can't remember. And the whole, again, the lights came on, and wait a minute, I can do this and have fun and make money and go. And they paid my way back, and they put me in a race. They gave me a lane, and I ran well, and I beat the NCAA champ. And it was, holy cow, the world's this actually works. And it was all fun and games from there after that.
That's pretty persistent of you, because hurting your knee, getting the second chance, so to speak, you heal up and you go, and then you bust the ankle. I mean, you had all the reasons, and no one would have maybe even looked bad upon you if you're like, what, all right, it just ain't happening, let me hang it up and go. I've got a job, like I can actually maybe move this towards a career. What kept you going? Where was this fire lit from?
I have incredible parents. And my dad, like I said, rest his soul, my dad was behind me 100%. And he would call, I talked to him every week, and we talk about it. And he's the person that learned when I was on circuit, I called him after every race, check in, how'd I do, what happened. Him and my mom, after he retired, because he retired in '93. And then when I got on the circuit, they followed me. They went to, I ran the Olympic Festival in Colorado. They went to Atlanta for the night. They went everywhere. If they was within driving distance, they would go. My mom and dad went wherever I was going. And so I used to run, which there used to be a great California series. It's kind of gone now, but in the early year, you could run Mount Sac, you could do Stanford, you could do Fresno, and they kind of had pro races. They were set up because one year I ran in Fresno, and it was me, it was the Schwarthoff, the guy from Germany, Tony Lee from China, Eugene Swift, who made our Olympic with 16 Olympic Games. Robert Foster. I mean, there were great races week in and week out and my mom and dad would go to all of those races, and they would go up and down the coast. They would come wherever I was going, they'd come follow me. And I had a great time doing it. And they stood behind, even when I was hurt, they stood behind me. I'm not, because they were like any parent, they would be, do you really want to do this? Is this what you want to do? And I'm like, yeah. And I had a boss at the time who was on board too, because I had a crazy schedule. I mean, I had the most narcissistic schedule you could possibly believe. And my friend, I used to live with two of my high school buddies, and they both laughed at me all the time because I'd get up at 6. I'd go to work at 7 in the morning, and from 7 to 3:30, I would work at a desk and answer the phone and help coaches and take orders and do what I needed to do. And at 2:30, I'd start changing, and I'd go in the bathroom and start changing all my track gear. And at 3:30, I'd get my car and drive to Long Beach State to go train with my coach. And then it took me about a half hour from 4 o'clock until 8 at night. I'd train and train at Long Beach with the weight room and all that stuff. And I had a great relationship with Andy Seith, the Long Beach State coach at the time. And he gave me access to all the facilities and stuff. And I was able to bebop around there and do it. And at 8 o'clock, I'd go home, grab something to eat, and do all the recovery work, the icing and all that stuff, and BS with my buddies, and go to bed and do it all over again. And they absolutely thought I was insane, but that's the way I lived for many years until I finally, even when I got on the circuit full time, I still worked because I wasn't going to give up what I'd worked so hard to get. I wasn't going to give it up.
It sounds like you're pretty close to your dad.
Yes, very close.
Was and I get this picture. I love that, this may not have been how it happened, but I get this picture of mom and dad in the RV. It probably wasn't RV, but I'm just going, Colorado. It's like, oh, we're gonna see Rich run. That's just what they did.
Oh, yeah.
Support.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with that because, a lot of parents and dads in this case would have said, hey, Rich, it's time to get a real job, air quotes there, to get a real job. Like somebody's telling you something, you busted your knee, you busted your ankle, but it seemed like there was a lot of just like unbridled support, like 100%, like, oh, this is what you want to do? Okay, then great. Then we're behind you.
Yep. Nope. That's exactly the way it was. That was, I mean, I like one year I made, I think it was 95. I was invited to the Bruce Jenner meet, the old Bruce Jenner meet that Burr Banana used to put on. And the week before, I rolled my ankle training, destroyed it. But I was so, again, narcissistic that if you invited me to a race, I was running because I gave you my word. I'm going to make this happen. And probably should have stayed home, probably should have, wrapped it up. But I gave Bert my word that I would be there to race. And Dan O'Brien was in the race and Roger Kingdom. And you in my world, you don't do that. You gave someone your word, you do what you do what you say you're going to do. So I hopped on a plane. I flew to San Jose. My mom and dad at the time were living in Reno. They met me in San Jose. And my dad took care of worked on my ankle. He got it all set. I got it taped up. I ran the next day. I think I was sixth or something in some awful race or whatever. And then I got in the car and drove to Reno because I went up there and rehabbed with my dad, who literally for 2 days pushed the swelling out of my ankle. I would lay on the ground with a pillow because it hurt so bad. And my dad would stand over me and push the swelling out of my ankle. And he would do it as long as I asked. He wouldn't ask away. He'd just do it. There was no ifs, no ands, no buts. He would just, and he'd always joke with me. And he'd say, I have no idea. He goes, I couldn't do what you do. And I said, it's what you have to do. It's what you have to do. And so he would do whatever I asked, whatever not to get on side, but when I was at the junior college, I was there for the first year and I wanted to race because I was anxious. I'd been to the state meet and after the state meet, I got a chance to go over to China to race in Taiwan and some places. And I had the bug. I had this itch to race. And so I was going to Santa Barbara. I didn't have a car because my mom and dad kind of sent me to school with a bike. And there was a race. There was an all-comers meet in, I want to say January at Mount Sac, which was about 2.5 hours from Santa Barbara. My dad and brother got in the car Friday night, drove 8 hours to pick me up at my house. Then we drove an additional 2.5 hours so I could race at an all-comers meet. This wasn't anything fancy. This was an all-comers meet. From there, I raced 2 or 3 times, ran different events, then jumped in the car. We got lunch. He went to Costco and bought me groceries for the month. Drove me back to Santa Barbara, dropped me off, and then drove back, went to work on Monday. That's why I love my dad, because that's the person he was.
Dad sounds like he was your first coach.
He was.
Yeah.
He was phenomenal. He didn't understand track. He didn't know, but he would go take Polaroid pictures of me hurtling and do video, and I would analyze it at home but he was basically there to give me feedback. He didn't know what, but he would say, this doesn't look right, or that doesn't look right. But yeah, I did not, my high school coaches didn't understand what I was doing. And so it was a tough haul.
Oh man, that's special. I love that. You mentioned going to China and Taiwan. Talk to us about, because that to me is one of the real unique aspects of professional track and field versus other sports. I'm reminded a good friend of mine, Dexter Falk, he was a 12 kid, and I can't remember the time frame. I think I was here, so it had to be maybe around 08.
Late 90s. Late 90s.
No, because I recruited him when I was
in
Mississippi State.
04.
Yeah.
It was 04.
And he had just not made the team, and he was like, "Yeah, in America, making the team, as you know, come on, it's impossible. You can be number 7 in the world, and you still ain't making the team. Yep. It's just ridiculous." And so I think he ended up being 4th or 5th at trials, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about just hanging up. You a little girl, and but maybe I'll do it one more year." And I was like, really, this is a 4-year commitment. You're not making a 1-year commitment. You only get to make money in this sport, and a lot of times if you make the Olympic team. I was like, so if you're making a decision, you're making a decision to go to the next Olympics. And I was like, and even if that isn't successful, I was like, you're going. He was racing in Antigua and all these other places. I was like, you're giving your daughter something that you can't pay for. The experiences when she starts traveling with you and you coming back and talking about different cultures and things. There's no money that can repay, that can do that. So that's what I love about that aspect of the traveling. Talk to us about these different cultures you went to. Were you the kind of guy, I imagine you might be because you're a history guy, were you the kind of guy you'd go to Dusseldorf and you'd like really kind of immerse yourself in the culture while you were there? Or were you just a, man, I'm a hotel guy, fly hotel? How did that
I was
experience?
all about making money. I was all about making money. So if you told me I could fit 7 meets in a week, I was at 7 different meets in that week. So I was on the Euro rail. You know, if I ran at 8 o'clock on Monday, I was on the train that night at 10 on my way to what the next meet that was going to give me whatever, and on and on and on until, like, because I only had a finite amount of time to do, because I was still working. So I wasn't going to Europe for 3 months or for 4 months. I was going for 2 weeks at the most. And so I was trying to get as much racing as I could in, and as much in, and even then, like, I would go to Puerto Rico and race twice before Puerto Rico took off. There used to be a meet over on the backside of the island, which was in a baseball stadium. It's a cool stadium I've been around. And but no, I had great time. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a great time, but I was the guy I was all business. It was a job to me. It was a job that I loved, but I still love my job today. But it was a job I loved. But it was still a job. I mean, it was still, you need to take care of yourself. You need to do what you need to do, and make it. Because I was also smart enough to know that jet setting around the world is fun, but if you're losing money every year, it's a waste of time.
Yeah,
So
the it's a job attitude doesn't surprise me with you. You know, if I put you in a tiddlywinks competition, I would never go against you, because I'm like, oh, it's his job. He's gonna win them tiddlywinks, man. He's gonna figure out a way. And if you do beat him, don't rematch, because he will have figured it out and come get you. But you know, knowing the background of history, I'm a little surprised there wasn't, you know, some immersion as much as you could, knowing that you know
there was. I mean, where I could, where you could pick it up and stuff, but it wasn't. The job aspect always took precedence over the personal side. So if even if there was in a city, let's say Rome, and you wanted to go, getting to the next meet was more important than going sightseeing. It just was. I mean, it was getting back into the grind of it and getting it done. I've been to Philadelphia 20 times with the relays and everything. I've seen the Liberty Bell once. It was the history I want to see. I want to, but you just don't have, I've been to China 35 times. I've gone to the wall once. I don't, I love it. I like the aspect of it, but it wasn't a vacation. It's no different. It's no different than if I go now for work. I have a business trip next Wednesday. I'm going for one day. I'm going to get on an airplane in the morning. I'm going to land. I'm going to have a business meeting, and I'm going to get on an airplane and fly home. It's work. It's not, some people look at me, who vacation, and they're like, well, you're going to, yeah, I went to China for 2 days one time. That's what it is. It's, you go over for work,
Yeah.
So it's not the same there. I used to do commercials. That's the way I used to pay for it, because I used to have an agent who got me hooked up with commercials, and you go out and you do the 1 day commercial shoot, and you go out and do, I mean, that's one of my fondest memories, that I got to dress up like Mike Piazza and hurdle as Mike Piazza one day.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I still have the photo. They basically, it's one of my worst experiences, best experience. The reason why is because I love track. And the group called my agent and said, hey, we need a hurdler who can hurdle in catcher's gear. And he goes, I got the guy for you. And he needs to be white because he has to look like Mike Piazza. And so they were basically running a World Series ad. It was an ad for Fox, and basically saying that the World Series got better ratings than the Olympic Games. And that crushed me. But the money was good. So I showed up at a local college here in Southern California, and I put on Mike Piazza's uniform, and I put on a pair of high tops, and I started hurdling. And we started 36-inch hurdles, and I had on the catcher's, I had all the gear on, and then they put the catcher's vest on. And they said, okay, can you hurdle like that? And I said, yes. And so I did it a couple times. And they said, okay, can you hurdle with the mask in your hand? And I said, yeah. And so we did it. And I said, yes. And they said, can you hurdle with the baseball in your hand? I said, yes. They said, you hurdle at the next height up? And I said, I can go all the way I can't go to 42s, but I can go to 39s. So I went to 39s. They took all the pictures they wanted. They did everything they wanted. And then about a month later, I got a picture of me doing it with Mike Piazza's face on it. And there was like 4 shots. There was one with a New York Met guy swimming, and there was like 4 different ones. And that was a shot I did.
So these are like print ads or
video? Yeah, and Sports Business. They came out in Sports Business Journal.
I was really hopeful I was going to start doing a YouTube search. I was like, man, let me find this video.
Yeah, I'll text it to you. It's,
please. Yeah.
It's a crack up. So I had an agent for track meets, and then I had an agent for all of the other stuff. And I did a lot of that stuff, as much as, like I said, as much as I could fit in.
So this is going to be a tough follow-up question, because you're going to say, look, I just told you, Mike, you went to a lot of different places. Are there any places that you were like, oh yeah, I enjoyed competing at this place or this country or this venue? Was there any like I loved going back to this place?
I don't think there's one place. I think there's multiple places with multiple experiences. Like Penn Relays will never, I mean, just the zoo that the Penn Relays is, and being on the infield when there's 45,000 people screaming. I don't care who they're screaming for, but you're part of the show. I think that's what people miss, is that you're down there and you're part of the show, and it's on CBS at the time. And when I was racing, it was on CBS, and it's on CBS, and it's just a big deal. I mean, it just, let me rephrase that. That's a bad. It feels like a big deal. It feels you're part of this ongoing show, and there's high school kids running around, and there's, I mean, you've been to Penn. There's 1,000 kids running around, and there's 45,000 people in the stadium. It just, there's nothing that beats that. And then Atlanta. I went to Atlanta once Atlanta got the Olympic Games. I went to I got to run, they moved the indoor meet there for the Georgia Dome. And so I got to run the Georgia Dome, and that was cool. I mean, there was 20,000 people in an 80,000 seat stadium, so it looked half empty. But again, it was the coolest feeling of being in that facility that hosted a Super Bowl. And then this was, I mean, and the track looked enormous, because we went from Madison Square Garden that looked tiny to this enormous football stadium. And I ran at Madison Square Garden on a Friday night I mean, that was the greatest feeling in the world. I mean, there was 11,000 people in the stadium, and I don't have favorite place. I have favorite experiences, and each one has a little bit of a different taste to it. I went to Puerto Rico on the other side, and we got put in the worst hotel in the world. And I was there with Joe Douglas with the Santa Monica Track Club. And at that time, later in my career, I started traveling with Joe and some of those guys, and they put us in this god awful hotel. And Joe wouldn't stay. So instead of staying in the hotel, we went over the hill back to San Juan, and we stayed in a casino. So I stayed up all night gambling. I thought, I took my money that I wanted to meet and started gambling. We had a flight. I said, what time's the flight next day? And they said at 2 PM. I said, sounds great to me. And I got my dinner and went straight down to the floor, and I was there all day. And then the same thing, I went to Reno one year I didn't race in the Reno Air Games, but I was there. I would have loved to have been part of it, but you know, the whole casino thing and gambling on it and all that stuff, those are great times. It was fun times.
So keep on that theme of, you have favorite experiences, knowing that there is no perfect race. Do you have a race that sticks out? It's like, oh man, I hit it on all cylinders that day. My ankle held up.
Mousesack 1995.
Oh, that was pretty quick.
Yeah. It's the race I ran 13:49, and it was a race where I'd had a couple races that went well, and that was a race where it's like, okay, you belong. You can do this with the other guys. Like, it was a kind of I'm not trying to say, you know, in today's day and age, it's kind of back then it put me top 10 US. It kept me in the ranking, you know, it was right up there with the boys. And I'm like, okay, now I can get into some meets. I can get into the Prefontaine meets, stuff like that. And that was the race that kind of opened the door.
Oh, that's cool. Do you still, because you go to the Mount Sac meet, do you still kind of get chills when you walk in? I know it's a little different stadium now, but.
Well, people ask me all the time about race. I miss racing every day. I miss being part of that. It's a community or a fraternity, however you want to see it, that is amazing. It really is. I mean, don't get me wrong, being a professional athlete is nowhere near what people think it is. But the big plus is a fraternity that you're part of for the rest of your life. There's a lot of sacrifice, and it's not, you know, I tell my kids all the time that I will never, ever push my kids to do what I do, because you have to want to do it. It's a part of your lifestyle that you have to want. It's not something, if you don't like it, it sucks. It's an awful life. It's just like earlier with the injuries and stuff, and finding that, I mean, that those are the dark days. They're the days that you're at home, you're sitting in a bucket of ice. You're trying to figure out why you're doing this to yourself. You know, what are you trying to accomplish? And then you go to a stadium that has 45,000 people, and you're part of a show, and you think to yourself, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And so but you have to want it like that. If it's just something you do, then it'll be something you do when you, like most high school kids, and they'll move on. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. You'll find your niche. You find what you want. For me, it was that.
How did you know you had I mean, again, the experiences, I love how you put it like that. It's quite amazing. How did you know when it was time to hang it up?
I couldn't stay healthy.
Mm,
I ran way, I mean, I ran until I was 35
wow.
because I didn't get on the circuit until I was 24 because of injuries. And so when I left, I had, like, I never made an NCAA meet. I was always hurt. I always had problems. I had shin splints. I had this problem. I was always dinged up. There was just part of me that would never give up. I always thought, I can do this. I can do this. But I never made an NCAA meet. I went to the University of Minnesota and I made the Big Tens and stuff, but I never made the NCAA meet. I was always hurt. Always had shins or fractures in my shin or a knee, something along those lines. And then coming out to California, where I was able to train on different surfaces and had different things, then I was able to get healthy, and then I started to have success, and then it was a whole different world.
You mentioned that you loved the racing and you loved the competition and the practicing. You know, there is a master's circuit.
Now
But
it'll never match. It'll never match what I have.
you told me you loved. I've seen these dudes, man. Now
It'll. Well, first of all, I will preface it by saying I don't have the time. Would I love to do it? I would. I have 4 of my own children. I have 2 other children with Gabby, the one I'm with, and so I have 6 kids. I run multiple companies. I sit on multiple committees with track and doing different things. And I have a child in college now, but one of my other oldest son, or my second oldest son, is a hurdler in high school as a junior. My daughter's a freshman, and she is going to play volleyball, or she just got done playing volleyball. She's going to hurdle in high school. So I coach both of them and help them. And then Gabby's oldest daughter is a senior in high school. So we're getting ready to get her onto college. And it's just, there's way too much going on. Yeah. I would love to train, but there's no part of my day and I'm so fanatical about it that if I'm going to go out and spend 3 hours. Like, right. I'm going to leave the office at 3. I'm going to head to the track. I'm going to do, my 40-minute warm up and get ready and use the roller and this, and I'm going to hurl, and then I'm going to do the cool. And I don't have 3 hours that I can give to it. And if I don't, I'm not going to be happy with myself.
Yeah, there's not much half-assing with you.
No, that would not make. And so I get asked all the time, but I just don't have time.
As the father of 2 kids, that would be like, that is the one excuse I will 100% always say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cause I got 2 kids and oh my gosh, there is no time. Having 6, I don't know how you have time to be here with me today, to be real frank with you.
It's a lot of schedule juggling.
Yeah.
A lot of schedule juggling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially as they get into high school, I'm imagining, because mine are 6th and 3rd grade. I mean, their schedules are book solid now, as little 3rd and 6th graders. As they get to high schoolers, have their own sports and lives and things.
Well, the greatest thing that ever happened is when the 2 boys learned how to drive. My life, because now I had new chauffeurs. Dad didn't have to taxi.
Right. Well, you mentioned some companies you own and committees. Let's start transitioning into that. When you did hang it up, when you couldn't continue to get healthy and life was starting to come at you and things like that, what did you do business wise, and how did it come into this? You were working for VS Athletics. It was a little different back then. Naming, you might want to get into that maybe a little bit. Talk to us about that avenue of your life.
Well, when I was racing, I enjoyed what I was doing. But obviously, again, there's a time commitment with everything you do. And I was having success not only on the track, but in the business side also. And so the owner of Springco at the time came to me and said, I would like you to be the general manager. I'd like you to take over more responsibility. And I said, that's great. But if I'm going to spend more time, I want something out of it. I want some ownership of this. And so him and I came up with agreement for ownership of the company. And I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do for you. And so that got me an ownership. And then a couple of years later, I can't remember exact dates, whatever, but we merged with another company. That's how Springco became VS Athletics. Mm-hmm. And then we brought on another partner of mine, a friend of mine, Matt Farmer, who we used to work together. And then he left to go do something else. And then he came back as a partner. And then I had some other partners. And long story short, Matt and I are the 2 owners of the company now, mm-hmm. The way it works. But so when that happened, I kind of scaled back on my racing. And that was in 2002. And so I started, 2001, sorry. So that was after the 2000 trials where I don't know if you can discuss that. But so 2001, I started to scale back. And then by 2004, I retired. I got off the circuit completely. And and I took over racing. But when I got off the circuit, a gentleman by the name of John Blackburn came up to me, who was in charge of the rules committee, and said, "We're always looking for athletes to be on the rules committee. Would you want to do it?" And again, I'm like, sure. I mean, it's something to benefit our sport and make our sport better and do all that stuff. Absolutely would. And so I joined the rules committee somewhere around there. I can't remember exact year, but somewhere around there, John got me as the athlete rep, one of the athlete reps for the rules committee. And I took over because I felt, again, the business that we're in, rules matter to us because it dictates how we do our jobs and whether the equipment we're working with meets specifications, or why do they specify something that we can't even do, or something along that line. I mean, you've been in the meetings with me, and so it gives you a chance to have some type of voice. I'm not saying you always get your way, but at least you have some type of voice, and you can give them a background of like, why are we doing what we're doing, and it keeps me.
Yeah, I was going to say, stay there for just a second on the rules committee, because again, you know, what I love, you mentioned John Blackburn, who again is one of these guys behind the scene. Most athletes, most coaches have no idea. Not only
and he's
John,
amazing. He's amazing.
He's a really great leader. Not only John, but you have this dedicated pool of people who are on this rules committee for USATF. You go all the way back, you know, people that have a great relationship with, Pod Kaminer, now Mark Kostick, and just people that, you know, no notoriety, they're not getting anything. There's no gain financially.
There's no self-interest whatsoever.
Self-interest. It is this group of men and women who serve the sport in a very equipment-based sport. Let's be real. And so, you know, everything from servicing to blocks to pits and everything, you know, everything. I mean, literally is everything, the whole rule book. Why that? You know, because there's a lot of other avenues to serve, and there's a lot of avenues you do serve that we'll get into. Why the rules committee? What was there a hook for you on? Because it's a very different part of our sport. Was there a hook for you in that, or was it more of giving back, or was it more of just I want to voice and learn about this aspect of the sport?
I think I come from a world where I enjoy the rules side of it. I enjoy that these are the rules we state. This is the way we're going to play the game. And if you don't like the way the game is played, and I'm not going to lie, I'm one of these guys who I don't like the way the game is played a lot. You either change it or be quiet and follow the rules. But if you don't like it, change the rules. Change them. If you think the rules are wrong, have a voice and change them. And so that was where I went. And I know that you sat in on the meetings with me, and you had the same opinion I did, which was, I'm here because somebody needs to voice a concern that this rule either is good or bad or whatever, but somebody has to step up and give their opinion. And that's what I want. Like I said, I'm not saying I win all the time, but at least there's a voice that says, this is bad for us. I'll give you a perfect example. As I told you, I have 6 children that I oversee. I always say that because it sounds better.
I was like, what? This is the other company you own, the family.
Exactly. And so we had a rules committee about adding 6-year-olds to Junior Olympics. And the committee, which again, I love the committee. It's the most eclectic group you'll meet. They're phenomenal people from top to bottom. I really do enjoy the group. It's one of my funnest 3 days of the year when I get to hang out with them for 3 days. And it's a group that respects each other. I just can't say enough great things about them. They're great people. But we're there, and they wanted to add 6-year-olds like AAU did to the group. And I'm adamantly against it. I think that having 6-year-olds compete regionally is great. Having them compete in the association is great. I don't think we need a 6-year-old national champion. I think setting a 6-year-old up for being a national champion, and that's their greatest. I would be devastated if my greatest exploit came when I was 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And so we were in the meeting, and I was going to lose. I have no problem admitting I was going to lose, but I still voiced my opinion that as a parent, my children will never compete a 6-year-old. I find this just an abomination. I'm not saying that you have the right to run your family the way you do and all that stuff, but to me, I had that opinion, and I was able to express it. No one rated me on it. I had that opinion. I sat down and we moved on with the meeting, but at least I could express my feelings that I don't think this is right for our sport. I lost badly. To this day, we have 6-year-olds. They do all that stuff. Am I right or wrong? I don't know. But the committee gave me the opinion to give my opinion. And that's what I value. Because I'm on a group that allows me that power, I guess I could say, to give your opinion. And it might not be right. You might be completely wrong, but at least you can give it and move on, and they listen. and we move on. We vote as a group, and then we decide. There's been some great rules come out of there that help our sport move forward. There's been some rules that you look and you go and you shake your head and you're like, why do we have to put that in the rule? Well, we do, you know.
What it was a great example about the 6-year-old. Do you have a memory or an experience with that committee of something that you're really proud of? Because I mean, it touches every. I mean, this committee. I'm going to talk a little bit and let you think about that for the answer there. You know, this committee is not just track and field as we think and know it here, as and on the podcast. It is long. It's road races. It's mountain races. It's the kids. Obviously, it's the masters. It is trail. I mean, it is the full gamut of what is under the purview of USATF. It's all race walk, it's everything. And so some things are more equipment intensive, obviously track and field versus race walking or mountain trail running, things like that. What do they call them? Mutts. And this is a self name, by the way.
Mountain Ultra Trail.
Yeah. They call themselves mutts. I'm not bagging on them. But, you know, so you've touched a lot of different rules and you're obviously a thinker about things. So it's not like you are only focused on the equipment side. You're thinking about 6-year-olds and as a parent yourself, and you're thinking about when the ultra crew brings something up, you're like, all right, does this make sense for safety and movement of the sport forward? Is there a decision that you might have had a strong opinion on or just been involved in that you're like, you know what? I'm proud that I was involved on this either implementation or maybe to your like 6-year-old example of, I was against it and I'm glad, you know, that passed.
I would say there's 2 experiences. One of them was right after one of the Olympic trials or one of the national meets. I can't remember. We came to the national and there was a big push to put drug testing in the rule book. And most people don't know, but drug testing is not in the rule book. It's only in there for one thing, that you have to be drug tested for a record. That's it. There's no drug testing is part of the bylaws and all of that stuff, but it's not part of the rule book per se. And the consequences and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to put it in. And our committee was against it. And I agreed with them as an athlete. The rule book's not a place that is a consequence of something that happened off the playing field. That's not an issue on the playing field. Mm-hmm. Rules are intended for the playing field. I know that there's a few that deal with the offside, you know, seat and all, but most of the rule book is dedicated towards what is going to happen on the playing field and what has happened on the playing field, not drug testing or all of that type of stuff. And the committee basically said this is not where it belongs, and we and the people who were pushing for it pushed it off and put it. I don't know if they put it in laws or they put it somewhere else. It did not end up in the rule book. And so then the other one was, which goes back to what you were saying, I'm not a big race walk guy. I'm a track guy, and because that's what I grew up in. But we have there's a race walk guy who sits on the committee with us, one of the great guys. And there was a race walk issue with how they judged it or something like that. And I didn't have 2 squats of understanding, but I listened to what he said and I took it in because before we meet as a rules committee, we meet on the phone. And so I listened to what he had to say on the phone. I looked at the rules. And then when we met in person at the convention, I listened to what he said. And I said, you know something, I agree with what you're saying. I think this is great. The sport needs to move in this direction to make this happen, because it's not about what happens in the championships. It's about what happens to the little kids at a race walk to keep them involved in it, to make it so that we're not DQing kids left and right and making them, who wants to go out and walk 3 miles and then be told you're DQ'd at, at mile, 3 because you did something that you don't even understand. And he convinced me, and I said, yeah, that belongs in the rule book. That's something that needs to be in the rule book. I'm not a race walk guy. I don't think I've seen one race walk in my life, and it was because it was outside my dorm room in Gene when I was at the national championships. I'm not, but it's part of our sport. Like you said, mutt, marathon, all of that stuff is part of our sport, and the rule book covers all of it.
Yeah, I like the rules committee aspect of it, and I think I wish there was a way to kind of like pull back the curtain so more people could see not only how it happens, but the people that it happens with, because there's a little bit of a misconception of it's this, the old school backroom cigar smokers that don't care about anything, just their power. And we're going to put this rule in because we arbitrarily think we're going to do it. We don't even think it's a good idea. We're just going to do it, and to see the really intelligent people and the variety of people from not only the different disciplines, but the different backgrounds of everybody. Like John Blackburn is he's kind of a genius. He's a really smart guy.
He's an engineer.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know. So say he's like, "What are you doing a track, man? You're too smart for us."
and the thing about it, to add to what you just said, John's the most welcoming person in the world. Like, he loves people to come in. He can't thank you enough for coming to the meetings and being part of the process. And he's the most open. And like you said, there is this kind of this, but no, I mean, if you want to go to the meetings, you are more welcome. He will let you talk. He will let you, even if what you're saying everybody disagrees with, he will give you your 5 minutes and then say thank you, and we'll move on to something else, that because no one's going to vote for, or no one's going to move, but he will give you your 5 minutes. And it's the most open group I've ever been with. But for most people, it just sounds boring. It just sounds, but to me, it's fun. To me, it's like, okay, I'm part of a process, and I like that.
Yeah, I echo that about what you said there about John, because I'm not on the committee, so I would sit in the peanut gallery, so to speak. And you and Jeff and some other guys were like, "Hey, Mike, so what do you think about?" I just give my opinions that way. And after like my second year, John caught me after one of the meetings, and he was like, "Hey, I just want to learn more about you. Thanks for coming." I mean, it was just like, I was like, "I'm no one, John. I'm just sitting in the back," and he was just so welcoming. That's the right word. It was like so warm. It was like, oh man, like, you oversee this committee and has done it for a long time. These people are so much more important. They're voting, and here he was singling me out. I just thought it was it was interesting. It told me a lot about his character, that he would come behind that.
Yes.
So talk to us more about continue going down the kind of this journey of ownership of VS Athletics, and maybe let's take a step back. Maybe there are people listening right now that are like, what is VS? Is that a track club? I mean, we haven't actually addressed that. Why don't you give us like that 30,000-foot level of what the company VS Athletics is and does?
We are one of the larger. We're one of the larger track and field distributors in the country. Not going to go through the whole list and all that stuff. That's not. But we used to be a company called Springco, and we merged with a company called Venue, that's where the VS comes from. And so the company Springco started in 1982, and Venue started in 1992. Springco, most people don't understand, but Springco made equipment for the 1984 Olympic Games. That's where we got started. They made equipment for the 1982 NCAA meet that was in Provo, Utah. They made the performance indicators and some other stuff. And the owner at the time, Brian Springer, who gave me my break, who to this day I have a debt of gratitude to, because he took me under his wing and gave a young kid a shot. And to this day, I still appreciate everything he did for me. So he loaded up the truck and drove indicator boards to Provo, and it was, and then so 2 years later, he got the call to provide equipment for the Olympic Games. So at the time, we had the V-shaped distance markers for like the discus and shot put and all that stuff. He actually made, one second here, if I can find them. I still have he made the hip numbers for the Olympic Games.
Wow.
I still have a whole bunch of them.
Holy cow.
And then he also helped with the bib numbers. And I still have them.
That's pretty sweet. That's cool.
And so Springco started in 1982 by Brian. Like I said, he gave me my shot in 1988 because I was leaving Santa Barbara. I was leaving Santa Barbara City College to go to the University of Minnesota. No. Yes. And I needed a job, and I was trying to qualify for the trials, and I was trying to train, and he said, sure. And I knew how to weld, and I knew how to ship UPS, and I got a job that summer.
So you're literally the guy that started in the mailroom.
Yes. Oh yes. I've done every possible job in this company, because I literally was the guy out welding and building hurdles. The first year I had to build 100 hurdles, and I put all the hurdles together, and I had to build indicator forms, and I had to, and I shipped everything every day. I was the warehouse guy for 4 months.
Oh man.
And then University of Minnesota came, and then I hopped on a jet, flew back to Minnesota, and went to school for 1 year. And then at the time, Southern California had this great all-comer series. They run 4 meets a week for 6 weeks. And they were good meets. They were timed. It was great. And they were all over LA. And there was a meet Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I would run every day that I could, and had a great time. And so I came home that summer to race in all those meets. And then I called Brian again and said, hey, I'm back in town. Do you have a job? And at first he says, no. And then he called him back and said, yeah, I got a job for you. I said, okay. So I worked for him that summer again. And then went back to Minnesota. And the next year I stayed because, like I said, I was training with Phil and I wanted to get it. And so he called me, Brian called me when I was at Minnesota and said, hey, we need someone to go to a clinic in Chicago for us. And can you cover it? And I'm like, wait a minute, you're going to pay for me to go, hang out with track guys, listen to a clinician, you know, because at that time, like I think Bobby Kersey was talking or something like that. I said, absolutely. And you're going to pay me? I'm like, this is great. So then I went to Chicago for a clinic and hung out there for the weekend. And then I came back. And so then at Christmas time, I came home and he said, what are you going to do when you're done with school? And I said, I'm probably going to try and teach or something like that. And he goes, well, if you want a job here, it's yours. And I was like, I'm done.
So
like,
don't say it twice. It's good.
Exactly. You don't have to tell me twice. I'm like, I get to live in Los Angeles and I already have a job. I'm like, I'm done. So that's that. And then it went from there.
Well, we truly love our partnership for VS. I've been here getting close to 17 years, and that partnership between Gil and VS Athletics was long and solidified before I even came here. But it's been awesome during my time to see it grow and working with you. And of course, you know, you said his name once really short. There's no way we can't have some shout out to our friend Matt Farmer. There's just, you know, he would get so mad and hurt. You know, we would just have to make sure we say that. So we do love that and love what you guys do because of all of some of the other things that you do. It's one thing, you know, we're in business, sell track and field equipment. I mean, yeah, I don't know if you guys know that, right? That's what we do here at Gil and VS Athletics is sell, you know, track and field equipment. But the sport and the background that we have in the sport causes us to kind of like love begets action, right? So we love the sport. There's a lot of other things that you personally do and VS Athletics does for our sport beyond selling the pits and the hurdles and all that kind of good stuff. Talk to us about, let's start with this. It's so interesting. You know, you're a California company. You do this indoor like state meet for California, which is crazy because it's California. You don't need indoor track because you're in California, right? But talk to us about this indoor circuit for California high school.
I'll give you the whole story. So back in 2009, Fresno State had an indoor track, 150 meters, something like that. It was really tight. It was in their basketball arena. It was the coolest track around. It was beautiful. If you ever see the pictures, it looks like Melrose. It's amazing. And so at the time, Bob Fraley ran it. Bob was in charge of it. And Bob came to me and said, hey, Rich, I want you to be involved with the high school portion of the meet. Would you do that for me? And he'd run the meet for a couple of years and had different meet directors and stuff. And I said, no, not going to do it. And he kind of looked at me. He kind of gave me, and I go, let me rephrase that. I said, I'll do it, but I have complete control over the meet. I said, I'm a control freak. I have no problem admitting it. If you give it to me, I get complete autonomy over the high school portion of the meet. Because I said, I have an idea in my head that I want to make. And I said, if you give me the autonomy to do it, I will give you all of the funding. I'll give you everything the meet makes. I just want to do this. And he said, what's the idea? So I gave him the idea, which I'll explain in a second. And he let me do it. And so from 2010 till 2015, we actually had the California Indoor State. I called a bunch of my friends because thankfully this job, you befriend a bunch of coaches and everything. And I said, hey, do you guys want to put on all-comer meets in the early winter? And the kids will qualify from those meets on, I think I had the first year, I think I had 10 meets or something like that, or no, 11. And the kids would have to hit a qualifying time. Then they could go on to the indoor state meet. And I had specific events. We ran 55 hurdles. We ran a bunch of weird stuff like a 150. We ran a 300. We ran a 4x1 lap because it was, you know, just stuff to get the kids involved. And they loved it. We ran a 1 lap, 2 lap, 3 lap, 4 lap relay. They loved it. They had a great time. And so we were doing all of that and having a good time doing it. It was stressful, I'm not going to lie, because putting on any meet, especially 13 or 12 meets, because you put on, you know, all the all-comer meets and then stuff. And so Bob got out of it, and they turned it over to Fresno State, and Fresno State didn't want to put we kept losing dates. Like one day I had to put the meet on a Monday, like on a Martin Luther King Day. They just kept messing with the date because it's a basketball arena with concerts and stuff, and they didn't want the track. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, but the administration just didn't want the track. And so we lost the track. They stopped giving us a track. And I was kind of reluctant to keep moving on. But a couple guys said, hey, look, this is our fall training. This is what motivates the kids. So I went with a buddy of mine and we said, okay, we'll do it outdoor, but we're going to do the distances. It's not going to be, so we run 60s, we run 150s, we run 300s, we run 1,000, or we do a pentathlon. We do all of the different stuff just to give these kids different experience besides the field events. They're all the same because you can't change those. And so we've been doing that since 2015. So we're in our 7th or 8th year now. And this year we'll have 19 qualifiers around the state. So starting in December 17th, we'll start running meets, and the kids, if they hit a qualifying time, they can sign up for the meet. And we hosted at Arcadia, where they host the Arcadia Invitational, which is that huge high school invitation, which is, I'd probably say, world renowned. And Rich Gonzalez and I are partners in this, and another gentleman by the name of Chris Drescher. And so between the three of us, we put all this on, and we do it because we love the kids and we want to see it. I mean, the amount of time we put in it is, a lot. But we've done it for 7. We'll keep doing it. I have all the results. I got all the stats. I got everything. We've come up with we have a really cool program because it has how many qualifiers in every event and what it took to medal and what it took to win and everything in it and all that stuff. And we do it economically. I mean, we're not making a ton, but we're making some money.
Opportunity begets opportunity. Has there been kids that of? I mean, you've done this for a long time now, so maybe you've heard any stories of like kids that, if it wasn't for this type of indoor track series, they wouldn't have done outdoor track and wouldn't have gotten a scholarship to Cal, Poly, whatever, things like that. Anything that this has really opened up for kids?
I've never gotten that, but the first year I did it, Corey Carter, the 400-meter hurdler who went on to be world champ, she ran in the first one ever in the intermediate. She was coached by a friend of mine, and he brought her, and she had a great time, and she loved it, and she blossomed. And it's given a relationship that every time I see her, I ask her how she's doing. And 12 years ago, we created a meet that she helped get herself going. And I go back and look at the results and see where kids are in the day and how they're doing. I mean, there was one kid who was 3rd in the 60, and he went on to be a free safety at Iowa, and now he's playing in the NFL. I think he plays for the Jets or something. So, there's a lot of kids that had success, and it's great to see it. And I like giving them that opportunity.
What I just lost my train of thought there. Sorry. That's awesome. Again, opportunities for kids to compete they're invaluable. I mean, if you're not doing it, no one's doing it. So appreciate you putting that on.
Well, to add on to that, because I've been putting on meets with this group, when our state's organization, CIF, decided to cancel our state meet in 2021, the 3 of us put the state meet on.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So the California state meet in 2021 was basically a meet that the 3 of us cobbled together in 5 weeks.
Huh. Wow.
Middle of COVID. And said, the kids, because we missed 20. The state meet wasn't done in 20. And the 3 of us kind of had a powwow on the phone and said, it's not fair to the kids to lose 2 meets. So we cobbled at the end of June. We put together the high school. It was it literally was the first weekend of the Olympic trials. And I didn't go to the trial because I put on the high school state meet down here so that the kids had an opportunity to call themselves state champs. And we did it as quickly as we could.
So I told you to put a pin in it about the California state meet and the unique that it's one division, right? And this is super unique to me, or super interesting to me, because I grew up running track in Alabama, and we had, I don't know what it is today, but we had 6 divisions in Alabama, and there's more people in LA than the state of Alabama, but we felt like we needed 6 divisions over in Alabama, and in California, there's 1. What are your, and so I'm going to ask you your thoughts about that, because I know you've been to a lot of other state meets. So Texas has 5 divisions, and
5 plus 2 private divisions.
Right, plus the privates. And obviously maybe it's different. I don't know the population difference between Texas and California.
It's about the same.
But you go, Indiana is a 1-class state track meet. Everybody feeds into it. Like you said, if you have 3 kids in the school, or 300 or 3,000, you all competing for the same state trophy. What's your thoughts on specifically on the high school level, and maybe specifically for track and field, because maybe it's different for football, maybe, but what's your thoughts about this, like one championship, no matter how big or small the school is, kind of the Hoosiers theory, if you will, for track and field?
I I love it, but I understand the argument.
Hmm.
I think it's great because if you say you're California state champ, you're California state champ. Part of me laughs, and I know this is kind of mean, but if you come up to me and say, "I'm state champ in Nebraska," 1A, what I mean, what I mean, where does that, what does that mean? You know, when I was at Minnesota, we used to talk about it, and being from California, I was the only kid on the team from California. Kids would say, "Oh, I was Illinois state champ," and I'm like, "There's 4 divisions. What does that mean?" You know, I mean, were you the big schools? I mean, what division champ were you? Like here, if you were, like I said, if you go to a school of 10, you still have to compete with the big boys that go to 5,000. But it doesn't mean, I'll give you, for example, when German Fernandez was a state champ, and he went to a school called Riverbank. Have you ever heard of Riverbank? Nobody has, because that's what, but he went to that school and he competed with all of us. And it makes a big deal because the best comes to the top. Now, does it also eliminate some of, yeah, I mean, kids who could be in a state meet, it makes for an ugly team competition because you can score 20 points to be state champion. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it's a phenomenal meet because of what it is. You know, but so.
Yeah, I'd agree. When I was coaching at Ball State, you know, I was at the Indiana State meet all the time, and just that one school or one championship. One time, the 100-meter champ came from a just stupid small school. They had like, you know, 50 kids in the whole school or whatnot. And I was like, man, that's cool. She won up against these big Warren Centrals and Carmel. Like, it didn't matter the number of people; it mattered who was the best person in that lane that day. And even you know, Illinois, back when I coached high school here, because I can get on board with this one. What Illinois used to do, they had 2 classes. They had a big school, small school. I can, you know, to your
point, they
have
private too, though. They have private schools. See, we don't have private.
Oh, is that all? That's all in the same in California?
Yeah, no, we're all they're private schools and public schools. All, and I know that again.
That's what I'm saying. They all compete together.
Yeah, there's no private division out here.
Right.
See, like Texas has 6 divisions, plus they have TAPS, plus they have something else, and there's 2 divisions. So there's almost 10 divisions in Texas.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I can maybe get on board on the 2 division, small school, big school. Maybe I don't know, but the purity of just one. That's because you're right. To your point, you say I'm California state champs. Like, well, there's no questions about that. You were the fastest in the 100 in the entire state, no matter what class, how big, because those are things you have no control of. I don't have control over how big my school is. I have control over what I can do with that German Fernandez example that you gave there. I love that.
And for the rest of your life, you can say you're state champ.
Right. Yeah. I love it. So I was just curious what your opinions were there, and knowing that, you know, you're going to have California bias, I was like, oh, I wonder what you know, is it automatically the best thing? But yeah, I appreciate that. So talk to me about something else. You talked about, you know, going to the Olympic trials. I see you at every NCAA championship, but when I see you at the NCAA championships and those kind of meets, I see you with a clipboard. You've got a headset on. I remember the first time I saw you, I was like, what are you doing, Rich? Tell me about this is a kind of a unique experience that you do. Again, kind of behind the scenes for track and field. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, back when I raced, I used to talk to everybody. And I befriended a guy who worked in the television side of it, who used to be a hurdler in high school and loved, like you used to love it and all this stuff. And so I talked to him all the time. So again, when I was getting close to retiring, he asked me if I would be interested in working TV. And I said, sure, I'll do it. So he said, okay, when the NCAA meet comes on, we need spotters. We need people who can, you know, spot the event, know what they're doing, can be on a headset and explain to what's going on, not just taking, but understand that so-and-so is in 3rd place, but he might be able to move up. He's fouled his last jump. Let's keep an eye on him, whatever. So if they want to cut to him live, or if they want to cut because they want to cut the video or all of that stuff. So I started doing that. I said, sure, I love this. This is that. So I did that for 1 year. And then they found out that I was a history guy, that because I love the history of track and field. I absolutely love it. And so as you could hear from my rules story, I like being part. And so they came up to me and said, well, do you want to be in the truck? No one wants to be in the truck. It's dark. You get yelled at a lot. But they said, do you want to spot in the truck for the producer and the director and help them out and give them stats? I said, sounds great to me. So they put me in the truck. And so exactly, I use, you know, I'd say so-and-so's been, you know, national champ 3 times, highlight him, font him, do whatever, work with him. That's so-and-so, because again, you got to know the athlete. So when they cross the line, you could say that's so-and-so who got 2nd place, who went to Georgia Tech or whatever. And so you could help them. So I worked in the truck for the next 2 years, I worked in the truck. And so then from there, they started getting me. And then they put me from there. I worked with a gentleman, some people probably know him by the name of Ian Eagle. Ian used to do the NCAA track meet, used to be the color, or used to do the play-by-play for track. He won't admit to anybody he doesn't know track. So I would stand next to him and feed him stats for the like. So for example, is him and I worked in Arkansas, and we're both hurdlers, so this will be fun. So we're getting ready for the high hurdle race, and I hand him a stat. I said, the last 9 of the last 10 champions of the high hurdles have come from the SEC. The only other school was a kid from Bethune-Cookman who moved on to Oklahoma. And I handed that, and I'm like, here, and he starts reading it off, and that's what I did. I would feed him stats throughout the event, and then he would either choose to use them or put his own spin on whatever he did. So I did that for 2 years with him. Well, then and then I was also did the Olympic trials in 2008. I did the Olympic trials in 2012. I did the national championships in 6, 7, 9. I can't remember after that. And then I got a call in 2011 by a gentleman by the name of Ralph Mollet, who was the production group who did the SEC meets, indoor and outdoor, and the NCAA meets, indoor and outdoor. God bless. He passed away in about a month ago. And he gave my first real opportunity. He said, look, we hear you're a good stats guy. We want to hire you to do all of our field stats, do all of our interviews, and to work with the talent. And I said, I have no idea what that means, but I'm all in. And so they hired me. And first year we did it was 2012. And I went to Kentucky for indoor SECs, LSU for outdoor SECs, Boise, Idaho for indoor NCAAs, and Des Moines, Iowa for NCAAs. And that to this day, that's one of the roughest meets I've ever been part of. But from there, so my job after that was weeks out before I had to concoct a list of people we wanted to interview. And so I'd run up with a list of people who wanted, depending if it was SEC or NCAA meet, I would send it to the director, whoever the director was, NCAA or SEC, and say, okay, these are the people we want to interview. Please put them into a time frame. Here's where we're going to be. Here's where we're going to do it. All of this stuff. And then they would contact all the SIDs and then put them together, whether it was a coach, whether it was an assistant coach, whatever was on the list. I told them, these are the people we want. And they would shoe them in. And then I would write all the questions out of what we were going to ask each person. And then that a producer also helped me. Between the two of us, we would put the questions together. She'd write her questions, I'd do mine. We'd bounce back and forth. I did the interviewing for the first couple of years, and then she took over because we bounced, because it's exhausting to interview people for 8 hours a day.
Sure.
In front of a camera and trying to keep it going and all that stuff. So we would bounce back and forth doing that. And so the day before the meet would start, we would go through and do all the interviews. And then that night, she would cut all the interviews so that we could put them into sound bites for the TV show of, was this interesting? And then my job was, well, is that going to be interesting to the people? Does this, what he said, does that work? So we can feed a soundbite into a race. He'd talk about a race, all kinds of stuff, whether we were going to pull video from somewhere. So we do that the night before the event started. And then I would do all the stats for all the field events. So then you have to go back, and then I would sit with the talent and hand them sheets of paper saying, here was who's in, of what the video cut was going to be. So you're going to see this guy in third place, this guy in second place, this guy in first place. He moved from fifth to first place on this jump. Here's what he did. He was Big Ten champion. He transferred from Iowa to now going to Florida. He's from Croatia. He's blah, 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 blah. And I literally do that on the fly throughout the whole meet and sitting with the talent until the meet's over. And at first it wasn't that bad. And then we started to stream, and you'd be on the air for 11 hours, and it got exhausting.
Oh, yeah. I'm amazed. My first kind of behind the scenes look at that part of it was a good friend of ours, both you and I, Blake Bolden, when he worked the NCAA one year at Crossplex and was kind of Larry Rawson's right-hand man, kind of, so to speak. And he talked about the amount of research these announcers and it really was like it's easy for us to make fun. It's easy when you're not in it to watch the TV and see a flub, or why is the announcer or the reporter saying this or not saying this, and blah blah blah. It's easy to throw those stones. Gosh, how unprepared were they, blah blah blah. And then to kind of see that and hear that story there, it's like, wow, there is so much research and so much, especially on a live and a stream, that has to happen on the fly. Like you said, there's no do-over. You know, you don't get to say, okay, cut, let me try that again. It's like, boy, that just went out, good or bad.
Yep.
But the amount of research that has to happen is quite amazing, especially in a sport like ours, where there's so much, not only where they're from and the schools they're at and have been at, but the stats themselves. And then of course the changes in the races or the changes in the field event from round to round. It really is an impossible task to get it perfect. Right. It's easy for us to watch it on TV and say, and do it perfect, because we're not doing it with the camera in our face or the microphone in our face. But that is really interesting, the amount of research that would go into that.
I joke with people that you do 100 hours worth of research for an hour TV show. And I mean, it's part and part, but you do an immense, because again, some of the research has been done for years and years because it's just stuck in your head, but you do a ton of research. I mean, I research everything. And there's a gentleman who got me into this business, also another gentleman by the name of Walt Murphy, who's amazing. I would never even I would never even put myself in the same room, let alone the same planet as Walt. Walt is amazing. He did it for NBC. He's phenomenal. But I used to work with Walt, and he used to help me with it and stuff like that, because Walt used to do the track stuff and I do the field stuff for some of these early shows. And I watched him because he was the consummate professional at this. And so you basically research some guy who if he doesn't get in the top 3, they'll never talk about it. You could have some of these greatest stats in the world, but if he doesn't do what he needs to do, it's all worthless. I mean, there's interviews I would have to go through basically and choose who I thought was going to win the meet. And then we'd interview this guy. And if that guy blows up and doesn't make it out of the heats, his interview is basically garbage because we're never going to put it in the show. So all the research we did, all the interview we did is wasted because he false started in the heats. I mean, it's stuff like that people forget, that there's hours and hours and hours that go into this that literally fall on the floor once that someone doesn't do what they're supposed to do, or does, you could have the coolest stat in the world, but if it doesn't work into the show, it doesn't. And so you have to be prepared for literally every possible scenario. And if you're sitting at home and you're a huge 5,000 guy and you know everything about the 5, of course we're going to miss stuff. It's guaranteed we're going to miss stuff. But you didn't follow the long jump. Like, you watched the long, and you didn't know that so-and-so broke his ankle in the trials 2 years ago and just come back. I mean, it's stuff like that there's so many events and so much that doing the research is unbelievable. And once you get, I do birthdays. I'm like, oh, well, we're going to say happy birthday to Leanne today, because, stuff like that, because it adds to the show. And that's all it is. Whether people want to admit it or not, it's a television show.
Is there a favorite race or event that you were involved in behind the scenes with the research or anything that you got to kind of be front and center to watch, that just a big memory, where there was a come from behind or a world record or anything like that?
Probably say the indoor 4x4 when USC ran the world record at the time, even though they didn't call it that. It was the NCAA record, but then they had, when Ry Benjamin was an American and into whatever and they were already, but that race was off the charts.
Was that the indoor nationals at A&M?
Yep.
Oh, that was that. There was a 45-minute block of craziness, right? The 200 was amazing. The 400. Yes. The 4x4, and there's another event. Maybe it was the high jump. I think it might have been Randall Cunningham and the high jump. I mean, it was just
that's when Randall broke his leg.
Yes, that's right. Oh no, that's right. Was just, I remember thinking. So I remember sitting on the back stretch, and all that goes on, and it's just Michael Norman, I think, was the quarter miler, right? That one.
Michael Norman. Yep.
And it was bonkers. And I remember thinking, it'll never get better than this. That 30-minute, 45-minute. And then next year, I can't remember where we were. Might have been actually back at A&M. And it happened again. Like, just again, this 1 hour block that just a world record here, the collegiate record, and it was just like these kids, and by the extension, the coaches that are coaching them, it's amazing. It's unbelievable that in 2022 they are doing it better by a degree, by a factor today than they were doing it in 2015 and 2010 and 2000. It is quite amazing. Like you mentioned,
it really is.
Your time at 1349, which was first of all, anybody runs 1349, you're bow down. It's amazing. And then today, it's like, man, cats are running 13 flat, 1312 on the daily.
Yeah, but it took 40 years to break Nehemiah's 13 flat record, and now we've got 3 guys. Like, I think that because what's his name? Daniels ran 13 flat.
And Daniels right there. Yep.
And then what's his name? I can't think of the gentleman from Florida State.
Trey
ran 13 flat. And then someone else ran 13:05 or something like that. I mean, and it took 40 years for them to get to that 13 flat, because he ran that back in 79.
Yeah, it is amazing.
And so now there's 4 guys who are right. I mean, it's a different, I mean, we could go into the shoes, the training, the tracks, I mean, it's a different, but it's still amazing to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is it's still amazing to watch.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. I agree. Rich, before we start wrapping up today, what am I missing? What have I not talked? There's so much more you do. We couldn't get everything in. What else are we missing to talk about?
Like I said, I enjoy the sport. My whole goal is to move the sport forward. So I sit on committees. I sit on, if I'm asked and I can make it work, I usually say yes. So I work with the cross country. This weekend, I'm the clerk of the course at the Southern section prelims and finals for cross. And I get to yell at the kids that their uniform doesn't match, or that that they can't do this, or they can't. I'm the guy that wants to make everything right. So I'm the guy that just do this and we'll get you through, and just or bring your coach over here so I can tell him what, I don't want to DQ kids. You've trained too hard to get to this end of the year. And, I know there's people out there who just love the rule book states this. No, I'm on the rules committee. I know that I know the intent of the rule, and I know the practicality of the rule. And I think there's too many people who want to go by the rule is the rule. And I think that damages way too many kids out there. I mean, who wants to DQ a kid who's trained for 3 months to get to the pinnacle, and you send him home because he's wearing the wrong shorts? I told one coach, I said, you're going to tell me, I'm going to whisper something in your ear, and you're going to repeat it to me verbatim, and we're going to walk away from this. And he kind of looked at me, and I whispered in his ear, I said, the green shorts are my captain's shorts. And I said, excuse me, coach, what'd you say? And he goes, oh, the green shorts are our captain's shorts. I said, sounds great to me. That's team issue, team legal. Let's go. I don't want to DQ the kid. The kid was one of the best kids in the state. Right. The coach made the mistake, not the kid.
Right.
And I'm not the coach. The coach has got 97 different things on his mind that morning. The rule is intended to be followed, yes, but not to the detriment of the sport.
Right.
And I think there's too many people who want to do it because that's what the rules say. And so I do that where I'm out there clerking the meet. I'm also, when we have the track meet, I'm in charge of all the equipment for our our Southern championships. And then I'm also on the committee that works with the groups here in Southern, to put on our meets and all that stuff. Because
where do you find the time?
I don't. I get yelled at a lot because I got to drop the ball here and there. I mean, when I disappear from here, they call, my phone's always on, my phone's always ringing. I try the best you can, but I do drop the ball certain places, and I do, certain things don't get the attention they deserve. There's no rhyme or reason to say what deserves more or not.
Right.
But some things do get put off because when I'm at the NCAA meet for 5 days, I'm doing certain things, and I'm not trying to say I drop everything, but you try and, you can only multitask for so long, and then you have to shut it down. And, I've been at taking orders, helping coaches when I'm before we go live on TV, and then I'm okay, coach, got to go. And then back to the live TV, okay, count me down. So, that's kind of what, as I said, the 2012 NCAA meet still is a bittersweet day for me, because it was the first one I ever did in my new job. Or I'd done 3 other meets, but it was the first NCAA outdoor meet I'd done. We were going to Des Moines, so it's not an easy place to get in and out of. I was flying in. I got into Chicago. I was on a layover in Chicago before I went to Des Moines. And I got a call from my sister saying that my dad was in the hospital, and he passed out in the ambulance and took him to the hospital. So I talked to my dad, and everything was fine. Everything was good. And I said, okay, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow So I flew into Des Moines. I called my sister again, and she said, oh, everything's fine. And then Friday, before I started doing interviews, because I had to do the interviews the next day, I called my dad and asked him how, and he was down on the floor playing with my brother's son, and everything was great. And so I did all the interviews and did that. And then that night I called and talked to my sister and said, hey, how's it going? And she goes, it's not that good. It's not that good. I said, okay, well, keep me abreast of what's going on. So then the next day I called in the morning and talked to my dad again, and everything was fine. It seemed to be going good again. And we're literally, I can feel it and taste it. And every memory comes back. I was on the air, headset on, the producer's counting us down to go on the air, 10, 9, 8, my phone rings. It's my sister. And I knew I had to answer it. So I hear the producer in one ear, I take the headphone off. I'm listening in one ear that we're literally going on the air. And my sister basically says, Dad's not going to make it. And I just said, I can't deal with this right now. So I had to hang up the phone. I said, I will call you back in 2 hours when I get off TV. And I went on TV. I worked for 2 hours. And it was a blur. I couldn't tell you what I did. I got off television, called my sister back and said, what's going on? And she said, Dad's in a bad space. He doesn't want to be on a breathing machine. He'd rather, and I said, you've got to be kidding me. So I talked to him and he could barely talk. And I said, I'll be there tomorrow. And so thankfully, again, I had great friends in the TV industry and stuff who they got me on a 5 a.m. flight to Dallas to Reno. And I didn't sleep that night. I basically slept at the airport in a rental car and turned the car in, jumped on a plane. I was in Reno by 11 and talked to my mom. And I knew my dad. My dad and I were really close, so I knew everything. And I told my mom, I said, Dad made it very clear to me that he doesn't want to live this way. And so I got to make the decision to take him off the respirator. And to this day, it's still the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And so I watched the NCAA meet from a hospital room. And every year I get to be reminded of that when I work the NCAA meet. So those are the, it's good and bad. Brings back great memories, but it also brings back a lot of hard stuff.
Rich, when we interview coaches from around the country, there's typically a mentor, a coach that got them into the sport or got them into coaching or gave them their first break or, helped them and supported them in really untold way, just not just the leg up, but the shoulder to listen to, the advice here for career and the change their lives, things like that. Earlier I said, it sounded like your dad was your first coach. And, I just think about, the support he gave you, the life he gave you.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
What is cool, I talk about this a lot on the podcast that, the positive impact that coaches make in this world for young people it's immeasurable. There's no amount of hyperbole that I can give this that is too far. It is immeasurable. It's invaluable. The work that high school coaches do with 14 to 18-year-olds, the 18 to 22-year-olds on college, the positive impact is those kids are going to go on to become moms and dads and brothers, owners of businesses, bankers, nurses, moms and dads, right? And the positive impact that coach makes on those young people is amplified because they go on, some of them are going to become coaches and they're going to coach kids. And again, some are going to be moms and dads and things like that. That impact continues to move forward. You as a coach, you sit on the shoulder of the mentors of you, and then all the kids that you coached they're on your shoulders. And, I just think about, in the father-son aspect with you and your dad and, just the amount of support he gave you. And now what you do, not only for track and field, which is extremely important to you, it's obvious, but to your own family, which I know is even more important to her. I'm from Alabama, so I can say important to her. But it's a continuation of his legacy, what you do for our sport. And again, much more important, what you do for your family, man. I mean, the cool thing is you always kind of get these visuals as people are telling stories. I just see Dad kind of just looking down and really not only watching what you do, which is, it's kind of cool to see that he's like, oh man, it's so cool and being so proud. But honestly, I just see Dad like saying like, all right, what do you need? What do you need next, son? Like, what do you need help with next? What can I, what ankle can I rub out? What obstacle can I get out of the way? What can I go watch next? So it's really special. I'm really, thankful for your kind of openness and authenticity for that really special relationship that you not had with your dad, that you have with your dad. That continues today. You continue that legacy today here, my friend.
Yep.
Rich, man, I'm so thankful for you. Not only obviously we have a business relationship, but what I love about this sport and what I love about this business is we have a lot of business relationships that transcend themselves into friendships, relationship amongst friends. And I'm very, blessed and thankful to be able to call you friend. As we wrap up today, we're down in our show notes, we've got the website for VS Athletics, phone number, email, things like that. So make sure you check them out and check out what they have for selection wise. But you, Rich, sitting on the ownership of the company. And by the time we're listening to this, we're getting ready for indoor season. We're going to have an amazing 2023 season. It's going to be a blast. I can't imagine, literally cannot predict the amazing things that we're going to see, because I wouldn't have predicted what happened in 2022 and 21. It's quite amazing. But for you, where you sit and the many, many fingers you have in the different aspects of the sport, what's got you excited, whether it's VS or rules committee, things like that? What's got you excited for this upcoming track and field season?
I'm excited from the whole level of the numbers came out, track's growing again with the kids, which makes me super happy. I'm ecstatic that we have world championships back to back, because I'm one of the proponents. I think we should have worlds every year. I think that our sport needs to be in the media every day. Not every 4 years, not every 2 years, every day. We need to be telling people how, I don't know why we don't have world indoors every year. We don't have world outdoors. There needs to be a world champion every year. That, there's a state meet every year. Why don't we have, and so I'm excited about that. I'm excited for all the federations that are finally coming back online, after COVID being such a devastating thing to so many kids. I was at my daughter's volleyball banquet last night, and this is the first full year that they've had athletics. They had it last year, was choppy and it was bits and pieces, and this year it's back to, I won't say normal, because I don't think we'll ever be normal again, but it's back. We're back with athletics. We're back with teaching kids how to be teammates, teaching kids how to put a full effort in, teaching kids how to look out for each other, teaching kids what it means to be on a team. And I love that. And I don't care if you're in an individual sport or not, you're still on a team. And it's a big plus, because nobody does this stuff alone. I don't care who you are. I ran on the circuit for 11 years, and I had a coach, and I had a trainer, and I had a therapist, and I had I had everything, and that was my team. And they, to this day, are still very special people in my world. And nobody in this world does it alone. You just don't. Yeah. And so every day you should say a very big thank you to all of those people that have put you where you are today. And my list is so long, it would take me days to get through that thank you, because I literally owe so many people so many thank yous for why I am where I am today, for giving me a break, for giving me a chance, for giving me anything, for just, hey, do it this way, try this, do this, talking to me for 10 minutes, keeping me in anything. If somebody comes up to you and is interested, give them your time. You don't know where that'll, you don't know where that'll lead. One day that kid could be the president of the United States, because you gave him 10 minutes and all of a sudden he thought the greatest thing in the world was that he could help people. You never know. And that's why I'm appreciative every day of what I get from everybody out there. And I appreciate a show like this, because every day I'm thankful for the people in my life and appreciate everything they do for me.
Well, you said I love how you put that, we're all part of a team. No one, no man is an island. Well, that is extremely true. No one is doing, even if you're the most loneliest person in the world, someone had to give birth to you, my friend. Someone had to raise you in some form or fashion, whether it's a higher power or actual person right here on earth, part of a team. And, here at Gale Athletics, you and your entire team there at VS Athletics, man, we're thankful that you're part of our team and we're part of your team. We couldn't do it without you. It's very simple. That's, this is a team effort, and we're really proud to be on that same team with you guys there at VS Athletics. So very thankful for you and the company, and for the people and the service that you give for track and field, serving coaches around the country, because it's what we're here for. It's our DNA. That's literally what we wake up for every day, is to serve coaches. And, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you for what you guys do for us here at Gale Athletics, and for what you do for our sport and our coaches around the country.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate you being here, Rich. Most valuable thing that you can ever give me is your time, man. So really thankful for you being here today. And thankful for you being here listening. I mean, again, I always know that this is not an easy podcast to listen to. We are always an hour and a half because basically because I can't shut my trap, but more because I can't stop listening to these great people that choose to be on our podcast here. So hope you join us next week and we'll do it all over again. We'll have a great Christmas episode here in 2023 as we get ready for season 4. So thanks again. Let's talk next week. See you guys.